Greetings, everybody. Redbeard here for the July 20th, 2016 edition of the Midweek Update. Today happens to be my 36th birthday. How does it feel to be 36? Well, I've got the knees of Rey Mysterio, the lower back of Shawn Michaels, and the brain of Bobby Heenan. Number 5 story of the week is that Nike is fighting WWE over the use of the phrase, "just bring it." This is a story that is a couple of weeks old. There's been so much going on here, we haven't had an opportunity to really talk about this, but it was filed a couple of weeks ago in some type of copyright court, whatever that happens to be. I'm not an expert in legalese by any stretch of the imagination, but it was a bit of an argument filed there against WWE and their use of "just bring it" because of the fact that it's very similar to Nike's phrase of "just do it." They're claiming that it would create a blurred scenario to where there was confusion in the marketplace. And you can kind of see how that would be the case because of the fact they're very similar. It seems as though this is something that has really taken a long time to come to fruition because the material that WWE began using was back in 2014 with "just bring it" on there. Of course, that was a marketing campaign that coincided with one of the returns of The Rock to around the WrestleMania period that year. But they've had this going on for a pretty good length of time, as Nike has had up until December, I think, of 2015. It stated in one of the sites that I researched for this material that they had to actually file any type of litigation along these lines, and they've just now recently decided to go after them. So I think this has got some merit. I think they'll probably wind up having to say, okay, they being WWE, okay, we might have to pull this off of some of our t-shirts and whatnot, but at the same time, you kind of hate it because this is a unique thing. I don't think very many people who are wrestling fans necessarily would go to a Foot Locker and say, oh, I want that "just do it" slogan on my shirt or whatever else. I'm actually looking for this "just bring it" shirt that's got the Rock's Brahma Bull logo on there. So it's one of these things to where it gets into a lot of confusion as it relates to the legalese, and it's something that people who get paid way too much money will definitely be profiting from, regardless of what happens, because of the fact that in the end, the only people who win in a scenario like this are the lawyers, not the fans, not WWE. Number 4 story of the week is that Ultima Lucha 2 Part 3 will be airing on the El Rey Network tonight. This is the culmination of Season 2 of the Lucha Underground program. As you know, if you follow this show at all, we are big fans of Lucha Underground. Actually went out of our way to go over to Atlanta this past weekend to see a couple of guys who were involved in Lucha Underground, and we'll have that story in episode 27 of the Rasslin with Redbeard main show. You can see that later this week, all things going on schedule as they seem to be anyway, with the publication of that material. But at any rate, getting back to Ultima Lucha 2, it is going to be tonight on El Rey Network starting at 8 p.m. They will be playing the first 2 parts of Ultima Lucha 2, preceding that starting at 6 p.m. So if you've missed anything to this point in time, there's your opportunity to catch up. Of course, they're going to go back and re-air the episode tonight, again tonight as well. The only thing is, this is a 2-hour episode, so if you get on at 8 o'clock and you miss something, you're going to have to wait until 10 to get back on the next broadcast, unless you're recording it via DVR or something like that. We're not DVR equipped at the Redbeard household. We always do things by the traditional method of just catching them when they're first run or then going on to the web and getting them that way. But at any rate, the show tonight is going to be a big capstone, a lot of matches involved in this particular episode. You've got, of course, the the Trios Championship that's going to be on the line between Aerostar, Drago, and Phoenix, and the team of PJ Black, Jack Evans, and who's the third member of their team, if I can remember, Johnny Mundo. I couldn't remember his name for a moment there. Then you also have the culmination of a feud that's been building here for the first 2 seasons of the program, that being a match between Black Lotus and El Dragon, that's Azteca Jr. Then even bigger than that will be the match between Rey Mysterio Jr. and Prince Puma. Crazy thing there. I'm sure that will be something that people talk about for a good long while here. And then there will also be the Lucha Underground Championship match, that being between the Monster Matanza Cueto and Pentagon Jr., another talent that we saw this past weekend in Atlanta. A lot of interesting things going on there. A lot of stuff will get finished up and wrapped up here with this show that will, of course, transition into season 3 that should start airing on El Rey later this year. But it's just really neat to see this thing come to fruition here and to see it continue to follow all these storylines and continue to be one of the more highly produced and real high quality shows on TV as far as wrestling is concerned. I don't want to sound like I'm gushing too much about it, but it's something we're looking forward to seeing. It's something that we have followed since the beginning, and I think that's one of the things that Lucha Underground is so appealing for, is the fact that we've been associated with it since day one. You know, the stories have been there ever since we first started watching the program, so it makes a lot more sense than 30 years of continuity that you have to remember a lot of times in trying to deal with WWE and other products. But be that as it may, definitely tune in to Ultima Lucha Dos Part 3 tonight on the El Rey Network at 8 p.m. Number 3 story of the week is a real barn burner. That is the Brock Lesnar doping scandal. This came out of nowhere. And, I say it came out of nowhere, but there were allegations being thrown around about Brock leading up to UFC 200 that he might be on something. But a lot of that was just chatter. One guy trying to intimidate another. But it seems like there was definitely something to it. It did come back late last week that USADA, the agency that handles all the doping testing as far as it relates to athletes in this country, came back and said there was something in Lesnar's primary sample. They've gone back since then, tested it secondary, and it was there as well. This is in light of the fact that he had taken tests previously and they had all been clear, and this one suddenly came up as being positive. It appears as though it came back for a substance that is known to be able to mask excessive estrogen in someone's system, which can be indicative of someone coming down off of a steroid cycle, which of course means that he was using up to a certain point and then it stopped. This whole thing with trying to be a chemically enhanced athlete just blows my mind, and it's rather odd, the timing, or maybe ironic, the timing, because we're about to head into the Olympics here this summer as well. But be that as it may, this was a bad thing overall in my opinion, because you had a lot of momentum coming out of UFC 200 for Brock and for WWE, and now suddenly all that will be put into question because of the fact that he's now going to be regarded as a competitor who is essentially a dirty fighter. Not that that really makes a difference when it comes to professional wrestling, because steroids in wrestling forever were like peanut butter and jelly. But they've tried to move on from that, and one of the things that was supposed to help in moving on from that was the WWE wellness policy. And WWE has pretty well been mum on this subject. They've more or less said he was not an active competitor when this happened, so it doesn't pertain to us, and he wasn't being tested at that point in time. Which, it makes sense, but at the same time, they're more or less washing their hands of it and saying, okay, UFC, you're dealing with this is your problem. Kind of makes you wonder what is going to be next for him, both in the world of MMA and also for pro wrestling. He's likely going to be facing fines, potentially a ban in the world of MMA. As far as wrestling is concerned, he'll probably be welcomed back with open arms. But we'll see what happens. For now, though, looks like his UFC career probably over. Number 2 story of the week is that Cedric Alexander shines during the WWE Cruiserweight Classic. I will go ahead and say that if you are looking to avoid spoilers for the Cruiserweight Classic, you might want to go ahead and fast forward about 2.5 to 3 minutes to the next story that we talk about, because this is going to involve some spoilers in regard to what happened at the second round tapings of the Cruiserweight Classic. So I'll give you 3, 2, 1, spoilers coming. Cedric was on tap to have a match with Kota Ibushi. If you looked at the bracket in advance of the start of the Cruiserweight Classic, you had to see this one coming. Kota Ibushi, of course, is a world-renowned talent. He is a New Japan Pro Wrestling talent. Definitely one of the top juniors or cruisers in the world. All those accolades are very much due him, trust me. If you've never watched his stuff, go out of your way to check it out. But he and Cedric did have a match at the Cruiserweight Classic in the second round. For all intents and purposes, it has been described as a match of the year caliber contest, and I have no doubt about that. It may wind up even being the match of the entire tournament, considering it took place in the second round and there are at least 2 more rounds left to go. that should tell you something about this whole thing that the WWE has been able to assemble. But Cedric didn't win. I'll go ahead and put that out there. However, he did woo the crowd to a point to where they were chanting, "Sign this guy, sign this guy." He received a curtain call, which that is unheard of. And even more than that, as you see in the image that was associated with the story, whenever he came back from the curtain call, Triple H met him there and welcomed him. You can't say much more than that, to be honest with you. I don't want to read into things. I don't want to put too much out there that it might not come to fruition. But the fact of the matter is, you don't get that type of response and then not, receive some type of, return on that. If WWE doesn't sign the guy to some sort of an agreement, they missed the boat. Just can't say enough about Cedric. We're big fans of his around here, but for legitimate reasons. He's one of those types that literally every time he's in the ring, he puts it all out there because that's the type of competitor he is. That's the type of athlete he is. So very proud of him, very proud to say he's from this part of the world, and very much hope that this is only the start of greater things to come for him and his family. And the number one story of the week, of course, is our reaction to the WWE Draft. This was something that we were looking forward to seeing, and after the fact, it's kind of like, that happened. Yeah. And I don't say that because of the fact that it doesn't seem as though they really did anything to change a whole lot of the product, but that's kind of what we're getting at the same time, because the alignment of a lot of these stars seems like they didn't really take advantage of opportunities. And what I mean by that is there were some really good work done by the folks over at What Culture WWE YouTube channel, and looking at the possibilities of how they could get the talent arranged to where it would really make for some interesting scenarios, and you'd have a roster that was interesting for wholly different reasons, that was split, and it really made a lot of sense what they were doing. So I'd encourage you to go check them out if you have an opportunity. But what you wind up with here now is something that's going to be, I think, interesting for at least the short term. Long term, I think we're talking about going more or less back into the same style of booking and creative that we have been looking at here for the past couple of years. But we'll run down the highlights of what went on during the draft. One of the bigger things is the fact that there will be a cruiserweight division, and that it will be exclusive to Raw. That was something that seemed to be skimmed over by a lot of people, at least initially. But the Cruiserweight Classic seems to have done a good job of spurring interest in the cruiserweights again, so it looks like they'll be getting their shot back and on the main show. Raw is still going to be the main show after all. It makes sense they put them there, though, because of the fact that it's a 3-hour program and they're going to need material to cover that entire time span. As far as the breakdown of the rosters, a couple of the selections for Raw included Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and Brock Lesnar. So both the guys who would be in trouble if they had the peanut cup potentially are on the same roster. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Charlotte, Finn Balor was the big selection from NXT for the Raw brand, and also the New Day and the Club will be joining the Raw roster there. And as it pertains to SmackDown, they received Dean Ambrose, John Cena, Randy Orton, AJ Styles, American Alpha, Bray Wyatt, amongst others. The interesting thing to me was that they went into this in advance saying, okay, we're going to pick 6 talents from NXT, and the ones that they wound up getting were Finn Balor, American Alpha, Alexa Bliss, Carmella, Mojo Rawley, and I'm trying to remember the 6th one off the top. Nia Jax. But the combination of talent was such that it was like, well, this was the crew that you went after? No Bayley? No Revival? What? They did that with a real cautious hand, I have to say. So the compliments abound in that regard, because they didn't just go down to NXT and say, okay, all you guys are coming up to Raw next week. Come on, let's go. Because then NXT would be totally devoid of any type of marketable talent. You can't go out and just, pillage a village, for lack of a better way of putting it. But a couple of NXT talents will be getting their opportunities. Finn Balor, of course, is now going to be rejoining his club buddies from when it was the actual Bullet Club. So that's going to be something that people are anticipating there immediately as far as the alignments of the roster is concerned now. The other big thing were that there were some shakeups with the announced teams. And I'm referring to my notes here because of the fact that this just seemingly happened out of the blue. But the announced teams for Raw will now be Michael Cole, Corey Graves, and Byron Saxton. Corey Graves, of course, has been handling the play-by-play duties and color duties, you might as well say, for NXT for a long time here, alongside Tom Phillips. But he now will be joining the booth on Raw. And on SmackDown, you will now have Mauro Ranallo, who's probably the best broadcaster they have, JBL, and David Otunga. I don't know what David Otunga has done to continue to warrant his employment, but I'm not really sure what he's going to be able to do on commentary other than provide maybe an ethnic look into the action. I don't know. It is what it is. The big thing, of course, coming out of all that is that Jerry Lawler is nowhere to be found. Lawler, of course, has had some legal issues here recently, so we'll have to just assume that that's some type of punishment for that there. But, yeah, the other big thing is that it's unclear at this point in time if the championships will be exclusive to one brand or another. At this point in time, Dean Ambrose is the WWE champion. We don't know if there are going to be two belts potentially, if they're going to have a red brand title belt and a blue brand title belt for Raw and SmackDown, or what exactly is going to happen there. So we're going to have to pay attention to the Battleground pay-per-view this weekend and see what goes on. And I'm sure next week on the shows they'll have a lot to really finalize as well as far as these rosters are concerned, because that's when the rubber will actually meet the road as far as this change is concerned. But in terms of meeting the rubber to the road, that brings up the opportunity to travel around and to see some wrestling this weekend, and there are a lot of opportunities for you to do that. There are 11 shows that we are aware of happening this weekend in and around the Carolinas. There's a lot of big stuff happening. The biggest of the group is probably the PWX, a new level, or some type of level. I don't remember what the name of the show is off the top of my head, but they're having their event at Club Escapade in Charlotte on the 24th. They're going to be having in a number of top talents, including the villain Marty Scurll. That's going to be pretty awesome because he's taking on none other than Cedric Alexander. But definitely would encourage you to check that one out, and also any other show that you might have an opportunity to check out this weekend, because there are lots and lots. Let's go ahead and roll those posters. We'll be back in a few moments to close out the show. There you have it, a rundown of the events that are coming your way this weekend. If you're a promoter, a wrestler, or in some way involved with a wrestling promotion, and you didn't see your poster in that part of the show, it's because we didn't know about it. If you would, go ahead and send us your information, either via YouTube, the Facebook page, Twitter, email, any of the opportunities we have to communicate with you. We'll be glad to get it out there for you, both on the Facebook page and here on the Midweek Update. It's a big part of what we do here on Rasslin Redbeard, is to promote the local shows and talent that are in this area. Appreciate you guys tuning in. If you are a subscriber, we definitely appreciate your involvement with this channel. If you are not yet a subscriber, we encourage you to go ahead and click that little subscribe button that's below this video. And if you enjoy the program, please also click like. That lets us know we're doing a good job. Appreciate you guys tuning in once again. We'll see you next week.